Welcome to MasterMinds, Lessons in Leadership. I'm joined by my co-host, Peter Linneman, where we discuss the intersection of strategy and leadership, which we feel is at the vortex of what makes every great company great. And we are pleased and honored to have with us today Matt Kelly. Matt is the CEO and director of JBG Smith. And what I think I'll do, Matt, is let you give a little bit of an overview of the business, which you started as a private company and now evolved into a publicly traded REIT.
Sure. Thanks for having me. JBG Smith is the largest operator focused on the Washington metro area. We're a mixed-use operator, and we oversee a little over 11 million feet of commercial space, almost 6,000 multifamily units, and we concentrate in neighborhoods where we can really drive value through placemaking and amenities. The most notable of which is National Landing, where we are currently building Amazon's second headquarters and bringing online about 5 million feet for them over the course of the next 4 years. So a lot of exciting stuff going on here, and right in the middle of everything that we think is most exciting about what's happening in the Washington metro area.
So I don't know really what to ask first, given all those things that are happening and Washington on top of that. But I guess what most comes to mind is mixed use, complicated. I always used to say, students, it gives you, if you do apartments and office, it gives you 3 chances to screw up if you combine them, right? Not just 1 chance and 2 chances, but 3 because it's a combination. How are you thinking about mixed use in today's world, in today's DC, or if you even want to go outside of DC? How do you think about that as a risk matter?
Well, we always look at it from the perspective of the customer. Who's the end customer and what do they most want? And when it comes to commercial space, we're in a large knowledge center, employment center city. Those employers, those tenants, what they want is an environment that's attractive to their employees. They want a place where they can easily attract talent. And when it comes to apartment renters, what do they want? Well, they want a walkable, amenity-rich environment. And when it comes to the retailers that serve those uses, they just want lots of people around, lots of customers. So there is a virtuous cyclicality to the creation of the environment and having all of those uses in one place. That doesn't mean you have to know how to do all 3 uses in order to invest in or benefit from that synergy. But our strategy has been to do just that, and to concentrate, and to do it in neighborhoods where we can accumulate that concentration before we have really brought online the value of that synergy, by having a rich amenity base, by having enough of a balance between daytime and evening populations that really create all of the demand drivers that cause the uses to enjoy higher occupancy levels and higher rental rate growth over time. And most people can't point to any one reason why a great place feels like a great place and why they like to be in this neighborhood or on that street. But we obsess over all those little details and all the things that it takes to make a place great. And it's one of the reasons why we try to concentrate, so that we can control those things and really try to move the needle and buy in at values that don't necessarily reflect that, but apply our trade, apply our skills to impose some of those things, develop some of those things, reposition neighborhoods, bring online some of the place that people look for, so that we then get paid a return through our efforts by taking it from maybe unamenitized to amenitized, or a neighborhood like National Landing that had too much office and dated retail. Now we have obviously Amazon, but we're also balancing the mix between office and multifamily, updating the retail, investing in the public realm so that it becomes a great place where people really want to stay. We didn't pay what it costs when the value creation is done. We bought in before all of that and believe that there's a lot of upside for us in our value creation activities along the way.
Bill, let me just push one more on that, which is it all works great when it hits on all cylinders. But how do you try to manage that risk of the office is mature, but it's not time for the retail, or the retail's there, but not the apartments, or that kind of, how do you keep it from only hitting on one cylinder as you get it going?
Well, keep in mind, we invest in the Washington metro area. So the places where we're investing usually have one or two of the components already. So these are not big greenfield sites where we're trying to create a city de novo out of just a piece of dirt in the middle of nowhere. And so National Landing is a great example. Lots of infrastructure, already has airport, metro, roads, lots of office space. Already has retail, just not the right kind of retail in the right places, and has some housing, but not enough. And so we look at that landscape and we quickly identify the things that need to happen soonest, and then the things that are phase 2, phase 3. And by owning all the parts of it, we have a stake in the upside, but we also then have the control needed to really deliver the right change at the right time. History is littered with examples of folks who had a lot of vision, but maybe had bad timing, or maybe owned the wrong thing at the wrong time, or said, they were investing in a neighborhood that was up and coming for 30 years. So you have to be smart about how much risk you take and where you take it. But we're typically investing in neighborhoods where there's one or two missing ingredients that we are well positioned to deliver. Most office investors can't do a whole lot to change the mix between office and multifamily because they're not bringing multifamily online, and they're not doing that kind of investing. We look at that kind of an opportunity as one that we're really well suited to capitalize on and to invest behind. And those are the types of examples of opportunities that we really that we really find mouthwatering when it comes to near-term upside.
So, Matt, on the subject of leadership, a lot of the CEOs that Peter and I have interviewed to date have talked about the importance of culture relative to the success of their business. Describe, if you would, JBG Smith's culture and how important that's been to the success of your business.
Yeah, our culture is just about everything. When you really think about how you get the most out of any team or any group of individuals, and it is what has enabled us, I think, to retain and continue to attract the best people interested in our business. And I would describe our culture as one that is very collaborative, very transparent, and collegial, and one that is fundamentally rooted in meritocracy and fairness. And I think that's one of the things that really does draw people to our company, is that they see it as a place where their career and their growth will be cultivated and nurtured, and they will be invested in as people. And to the extent there are things that they need to work on or do better, we're a pretty open and sometimes brutally honest place where people really will get the kind of guidance and support and feedback that they need to really do their best. And it's not for everybody, but that's the kind of place that we have created. And it's, I think, the kind of thing that really draws people that are looking for big, interesting things to work on. Sometimes things that are complicated. We, as you mentioned earlier, Peter, being a mixed use operator is more complicated than focusing on a single use. And so we tend to attract people that like those complicated problem solving opportunities. And so it makes for a pretty dynamic workplace. And I think that's one of the things that's been a real strength for us from a culture standpoint.
And Matt, one follow-up question to that, I'll turn it back to Peter. Is it easier to build a culture like that if you're hiring and developing younger people versus hiring more experienced people?
And Bill, let me add into that, easier when you were private, easier when you're public, or no difference?
Good point.
Yeah, good question. We actually had the ability really to do our own mini experiment around this when we merged with and spun off the Vornado DC business because we were bringing together two companies that in some instances had different cultures, but certainly had there were a lot of folks at Vornado who'd just been around longer, frankly. Our team tends to be a bit younger. And so we saw in real time, how do you create one culture out of that? And how do different people who have less or more experience, more miles on the tires, respond in that environment? And I don't think it falls down along age lines. There are a lot of folks who spent decades at Vornado who happily dove in and said, this culture is different. It's this way of working is different. It's new to me, and they ramped up incredibly quickly and are now full-fledged carriers of our culture, and even passing it on to folks on their team. And I often find that you find people later in their careers who are seeking that. They may have worked in one way or in one place for a very long time, and they're actually really embrace the change because it's a way it's a way to experience something new and maybe even reinvent yourself a little bit. I think our culture also is one where we really try to share credit. People really try to work together. When something goes wrong, we don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out, whose fault it was. We try to figure out what was it about our system or our approach that was flawed that we collectively need to change. And so there's a real tendency toward collaboration there, which I think people of any age prefer and like working in that manner.
So, Peter, for those of us who have miles on the tires, there's hope.
I've got bald tires at this point.
Yeah. Well, there you go. They still work though. And I would, to your question, Peter, about public versus private. I think in the end, it really doesn't matter. I think yes, you have different pressures. There are different expectations externally. But internally, what it is that motivates people, what drives people, is the work. It's not the investor base, and it's the work and the team and how the team works together that defines someone's experience in the job. And if your experience in the job or your happiness with the job is purely a function of the structure of your comp or the structure of your investor base, well then you're in the wrong. Probably in the wrong job, definitely in the wrong company. And so I would put it to you that I don't think it makes any difference at all. So
as you think about coming out into the next few years, hopefully post-pandemic, how do you think about it strategically? Guarded, aggressive, stay on course, your projects are long-term? How do you think about that?
It's a great question. We came into the pandemic waiting and having waited and having been prepared for some kind of a downturn. It's kind of hard to remember almost, but we were coming to the end of what was the longest expansion in history. And we just felt in our guts that, okay, we're due for a correction of some kind, and we need to be prepared for that. And so we did prepare for that. We deleveraged, we recycled and sold out of a lot of office buildings that we had been seeking to sell. We ended up issuing equity at in retrospect, what looks, to have been almost a high point in our stock to date in order to deleverage. So we came into it prepared. We had no idea COVID was coming. We had no idea a pandemic was coming, obviously. But we were poised and ready to become more invested with the next turn in the cycle. And so our posture was one of being prepared to be aggressive. We came into COVID expecting, maybe hoping that there would be a correction in asset prices that would allow us to be more acquisitive and to do some of the things we had done in the last downturn. That doesn't seem to have presented itself just yet, but we also have a lot of internal growth investment opportunity, namely multifamily assets in the path of Amazon's growth, taking advantage of that tailwind. And we have spent the time during COVID to get entitlements and projects designed that we expect to tee up for new investment in the coming years. So our approach will very likely be one that is more aggressive in continuing disposal of some of the non-core office assets we had sought to sell, continuing heavy investment in new multifamily in the path of Amazon's growth. And thankfully, Amazon has only hired and grown faster during this period of time than they did prior. And they've committed to even more square footage, more space in National Landing, which, as I said earlier, is over half of our company. So our posture coming out of this, we expect, will be more aggressive, not less.
So, Matt, this is one of Peter's favorite questions that he asks all of our interviewees. So, Peter, why don't you ask one of your favorite questions?
Well, one of them is, if I don't know if your parents are still alive or not, Matt.
They are. They're both.
So what if I told you I've got them on the phone here with me, and I'm about to ask them, what makes you most proud of Matt? What am I going to hear on the other end of the line, do you think?
That's a great question. I think they would say they're first of all, I think they would they'd probably give you a very different description of what I do, right? Like most parents, I feel like as much as you talk about what you do, they never really fully understand it the way industry insiders do. So, they might say, "Oh, I think he sells houses" or something like that. I think he works for Amazon. Doesn't he work for Amazon? In a way we do directly, but we work for all our customers. But I think what they would say is, we're glad he didn't let it go to his head. They were all, that was always a big deal when I was a kid. Was you may think you're doing a good job, but there's always somebody out there doing it better. Don't let it go to your head. Don't rest easy on any one victory or any success, because these things are they're fleeting. They take just as much luck as they do skill. Don't get ahead of yourself. And I think they would probably appreciate the fact that I think I've done a decent job of keeping that in mind, keeping sight of the fact that there are plenty of people out there in the world who are just as good at what they do as I am, who didn't have the right luck at the right time, and who for those reasons didn't get to a spot like this. And, it has a lot to do with it. Also, the people who mentored you and trained you along the way. I've been really fortunate. I've had some great ones. And you never know whether that's going to happen to you or not. You can seek it out, but you just never know.
By the way, that is exactly what they just told me. So
Matt, Peter has never asked me that question. But when my parents ask me what I do, I just tell them it's highly confidential. And then I really don't have to tell them what I do, because I'm not sure I even know myself.
So they tell their friends, "I think Bill works for the CIA, but we're not sure."
I tell them we're in one of your office buildings, and they think that's all good. So it's all great. Well, speaking of mentors, as we have interviewed the various leaders we have, they all attribute their success to one, in some cases, maybe more than one mentor. Can you just share with us maybe, who your mentor or mentors might have been, and maybe what you learned?
Yeah, well, there've been a lot of them, and I can't name one of them without pissing off all the other ones. So right, so
it's like the Academy Awards, right? Well,
right, go through the list, but, and it's ongoing, right? I've got a number of them are members of my board of trustees, and the partners of JBG who hired me and gave me a lot of rope to either prove myself or do myself in. They from early on in my real estate career were instrumental. They really I think put a lot of trust in me at a young age, that I seemed like I had promise, and they were willing to really invest in me by giving me the learn by doing experiences that are so valuable to really going through what I call the apprenticeship process of this business. And since our closing and so guys like Mike Glosserman and Rob Stewart and Ben Jacobs, and Porter Dawson and Brian Coulter, I mean those guys were all so incredibly generous with their time and their energy, and even after the merger with the Vornado DC business, Steve Roth on our board, is an incredibly valuable resource. And those guys all, there's a consistent theme, which is really telling you what they think, but then kind of getting out of your way and letting you go and kind of try it your way, and not micromanaging while you're coming up and trying to contribute. And I think that has been incredibly valuable.
So, Matt, behind Bill, you may see it says generosity. How, you're a young guy, but how does philanthropy, time, energy, money, whatever it may be, how does that fit into your life, your thought process?
Yeah, it's another good question. The idea of generosity really has been something very central to my family. Every family has, family legend, family lore that gets passed down, and one of the most impactful stories from my family's history actually has to do with generosity and people kind of giving to others. My father was born in Ireland, and his father before him was the first member of the family who learned how to read and write. And he did so because of the generosity of the daughter of the English landlord on whose estate they farmed. And, she saw in this young Irish kid promise and potential and a desire to learn how to read. And so she taught him how to read. And he then later became a school teacher and taught all of the kids in their small town. He married a fellow school teacher. The two of them, my dad's parents, taught all 9 kids in his family and all the other kids in that Irish town. And we actually named our first child after her. It was something that, she just decided to give of herself to someone else in a way that now, where would I be but for that person's generosity? And so my biggest issue is I have a hard time saying no when people ask me, can you help with this, or can you help with that, or can you talk to this kid about real estate? I spend a lot of my time doing stuff like that because I keep thinking, is my version of that experience out there somewhere where I'm going to have that impact on someone, and probably not even ever know it. It feels to me like a pay it forward obligation that, is one of the reasons why I'm here.
So, Ben, I have this charity over in Kenya, and once a month I get together with my kids. I have you on tape. I'm now going to ask you one of these times to speak to them. That's such an amazing story for these kids. So, well done. Well done.
Happy to do it.
Hey, Matt, I'm really sorry. If I knew you were going to say that, I would have cut you off in the past, buddy. I knew Peter was coming back.
I need it,
Yeah. So.
Go to it, Bill. You take us down the home stretch.
All right. Last question, Matt. You've for a guy your age, you've had a meteoric career, right? You've risen through a great private company. You've helped run that private company. You've helped take that private company public. Let's assume you're surrounded in a conference room by the next generation of leadership. And with everything you've learned at a young age, if you're going to talk about the future with them, what advice are you going to have for them?
I am asked that question not infrequently by sometimes I guest lecture at schools, and students ask, how do I pick my employer? How do I pick the right job when I'm coming out of school? What criteria should I use? And I consistently tell people that there's really only one criteria that matters, and that is to just align yourself with good people. Align yourself with people that you trust. And don't worry if the title maybe isn't the title you want, or the pay isn't the pay that you want, or they're not promising me equity day one, or all the things that we stack up to compare one opportunity versus another. What's the best job for me? The best job, I think, for anybody is the job working for someone who actually cares about them, who they can actually trust, and who's going to look after them to make sure that they grow and that they have a fulfilling job and a fulfilling career. And my dad used to describe it as where you hitch your wagon. He was born in the 30s, right? So a lot of wagon analogies, but hitch your wagon to a good person, and the rest will take care of itself. Because the truth is, the rest, is a lot of luck, and you can't underestimate how much luck has to do with it, and you can't control that, but you can control who you align yourself with, who you spend time with. Don't take the job that pays the most, but it's you're with a bunch of sharks who don't trust each other, and that's going to be an awful experience. Go with the people who you trust and who are fundamentally good people, and you can't go wrong.
And then just one quick addendum to that. Let's assume the room's filled with people who have 10, maybe 15 years of experience, and they ask you the same question. Kind of what have you learned that they need to be mindful of for the next 20 years of their own careers?
Great question. I would say the one thing that I have seen in people who are kind of mid-career, who really do succeed versus those who don't, again comes back to a similar principle, which is quite often when people are unhappy, they attribute it to things that they've known about for a very, very long time. And yet inertia keeps them in the wrong place for far too long. And I think people, as they get older in their careers, start to learn a lot about themselves, and they of course know a lot about many different roles and functions and jobs. And many times people stay stuck in the wrong function or the wrong company or the wrong culture far longer than they should. And they shouldn't be afraid of the uncertainty that comes with making a change. And I've seen people go from, job A to job B and totally flourish and say, God, I wish I'd done that sooner. Or, I don't know why I'm in a sales job. I'm a total introvert. And, but they've been doing it for 10 years. And say, listen, you got to listen to yourself and to those around you, and really ask yourself, does it make logical sense that I'm sitting where I'm sitting? And if they listen to me in the first place of working with good people, then it shouldn't be hard to have the rest of it work. But you've got to be in a good fit for yourself. And so many people just don't do that. And we've had people who we're not a small company. We've had people who are incredibly successful working by themselves or with one or two people who have worked with us and left, and we remain very close to them. But they've flourished because they just couldn't work in a big company. And likewise, we've had other people who've tried things on their own, and then when they come to the bigger company, they say, this feels like me. This feels like where I fit, where I belong. And the same thing happens in reverse. So I think people need to pay close attention to what their needs are, what their personality is, and whether it's a good fit for the job they're in.
Well, Matt, this has been great. Thank you, my friend.
Terrific.
Appreciate it.